Howdy ho, neighbors! We are back at our favorite, most dangerous airport in Lukla, Nepal, winding down our series flying Aerosoft's DHC-6 de Havilland Twin Otter, pushing the envelope high in the Himalayas. For our final flight, we are returning to Kathmandu International Airport, where we started our journey. The weather is marginal for VFR flight, especially in the mountains with barely 3 miles of visibility. So we have filed an IFR flight plan, and we will be flying instruments for the return trip into Kathmandu. It's late in the day, the sun will be setting soon, so we better get going. Giddy up! Let's just take a quick look at the sectional chart that shows our route. You can see Kathmandu Airport and Lukla Airport. Lukla is here to the west. Kathmandu is here to the east, and this is the Sky Vectors sectional VFR chart that we are looking at right here, and we can zoom in and actually see a little more detail. There's Lukla. This is our first waypoint, Faplu Airport, that will be flying up the valley and gaining some altitude before turning on course towards Kathmandu. And then we have the, as you can see in our flight plan over here, Kempty intersection is our next waypoint. That is where we will join the airway, the Victor Airway, and we will fly to our initial approach fix, which is right here, egress, and then we will fly the VOR DME approach into Kathmandu. And one handy dandy little feature about this en route or this chart is that we can look at an en route IFR chart just by clicking on either world low or world high. Either one will give it to us, and you can see the magenta line is our chart, and then there's the Golf 348 and Bravo 345 airway, the Kempty intersection, and then here's the VOR Kathmandu. You'll notice the frequency here is 113.2. This is a newer chart. Our approach plate, which we're going to look at right now, is actually different, and you'll see why. So this is our approach plate for the VOR DME approach. It's a circling approach into Kathmandu. You can see egress intersection, our initial approach fix, which is right here, and we will be at 10,500 feet when we cross that fix, and then we will be able to descend down to 9,500. We can identify egress by the DME. It's 15 DME from the VOR, or we can also put it into our GPS. It's one of the waypoints in the database, so we'll actually do both, and we'll be able to descend down to 9,500 until we get to 10 DME, and then 7,500, 6,600, 6,156, and so on until we get to the missed approach point, which is here, and that is 1 mile from the DME. The minimum descent altitude is 5,120 feet, and that is during the daytime when we have at least an 800-foot ceiling and 2,500 meters of visibility. So our missed approach procedure is here. We would need to climb straight ahead to the VOR, then proceed outbound on the 289 radial, and then cross the LDK NDP at or above 10,500 feet, and then we would be holding until further instructions from ATC. So that's our basic procedure. We're going to need to really track inbound and stay adhere to this procedure very carefully, as there is high terrain surrounding us. Here's a 7,000 foot peak here. Here's a 9,200, almost 9,300 foot peak here, and there's a 6,000 foot peak there at the 10 DME. So we're going to want to make sure that we don't waver from this, and but this should bring us safely into Kathmandu. Now, just a note, this is, if you'll notice, the frequency is different than it was on the sectional chart and the en route chart. It's 112.3 for the VOR. This is an older chart. It is dated April of 2002. In the real world, we would never use this chart because it's so far out of date. But in Flight Simulator, it's actually handy because that's the frequency of the VOR in Flight Simulator, because the database there has not been updated for quite some time. So I update my database with the Nav data, Nav Pro, what is it? I'll have to think of it later. But anyway, I do keep my database updated typically when I'm flying various aircraft, but in this particular case, it's out of date. So anyway, that's about all I have to say about that, and let's go flying. All right then, let's get this show on the road. We've checked the weather. Flight plan is complete, fuel's loaded and checked, and cabin doors are closed and latched. Seat belt, shoulder harnesses are fastened. Control lock is removed. Parking brake is set. Cabin lighting. We'll go ahead and cut these on. Let's get our no smoking, our seat belts on, and we'll leave everything there off for right now. Our flap handle is in the up position. Let's get our throttles in the idle position. Prop levers full forward. And our fuel shut off needs to be off. Fuel cutoffs are off. So let me just double check. Power levers, yep. Okay, let's go with DC master on. Battery switch external on is what we want. I hear some gyros spinning up. And let's take a look down here at our battery voltage. Yep, we're good there. Cursory check of our caution light. Looks like that's good. And we've already checked our fire detection. We're just gonna go ahead and, well, we'll just let you hear the bell. Yep, it's working. I've already checked the mute switch, that's working. And fuel quantity, we have a little less than 700 pounds over here on this tank. The aft tank and the forward tank we have about 600 pounds. So plenty of fuel. And let's do a test of our indicators. They're working. Our hydraulic pressure is good there. Let's go ahead and get our booster pumps on. Propeller area, it's clear. No Sherpas are milling about. Starter switch right. 12% NG. Add some fuel. Monitor oil pressure is up in the green. Fuel flow's coming up. NG stabilizing. Prop RPM stabilizing. Have a good start. Monitor NG, 12%. Add fuel. Oil pressure coming up. NG stable. Prop stabilizing. Fuel flow's good. 2 good starts. Let's get our generators on. Strobe lights on. Should technically probably wait until we get ready to take off, but we'll just go ahead and leave them on. And bleed airs are on. And we're gonna be taking off in just a sec, so we'll go ahead and cut on our taxi light. I think that takes care of everything up here. I do think I'm gonna go ahead and cut on panel lights since it's late in the day. Okay, we'll go ahead and dial in our altitude, cruise altitude, 14,000 feet en route. And let's get our avionics all on. And go ahead and put in our squawk code. And just sort of curious to see what our flight plan looks like that we loaded in here. So first waypoint is Fat Blue, and then Kempty intersection, and then we're going to put in the approach, which will come in here. So everything looks good there. That's already set up. Great. So we'll close that out. Let's cut VNav on and go ahead and put our comm on 122.8 for the advisory frequencies, Unicom for Lukla. And our next frequency is going to be Kathmandu approach, and that frequency is 125.1. So we'll go ahead and plug that in too. Have that one ready. And then the first nav aid that we'll be tuning into VOR wise will be the Kathmandu VOR, Kilo Tango Mike 112.3. So we'll go ahead and put that in as well. Make sure we identify that later on. In fact, I'll go ahead and cut that on so when we pick it up we'll hear it. And we'll just save these right now. Tune those in route. So avionics are on. Transponder set. Comm frequency set for departure. Nav frequencies and radials set and not yet identified. GPS waypoints flight plan is loaded. Our altimeter is set. Autopilot, we have 14,000. Our heading bug, we will want to go ahead and set that to a departure heading of about 040. That'll take us to Kathmandu just to verify. I'm glad I did, because that's not correct. It's 217 is our direct track. So 040 is pretty much the reciprocal. So we would have been going the wrong direction. That wouldn't be good. So let's bring that around. .217 right along in there. So that's our direction of flight for departure. And we'll just go ahead and do our rest of our checklist right here so we don't block this very small parking area. Cut our auto feather on. Check our flight controls. Free and correct. Yes, they are. Look here at our trims. A little bit of rudder trim there, and a little bit of nose up trim. And we want to set our flaps 10 degrees for departure. And let's be sure we got our pitot heat on. We do. And our bleed air's on. Ice protection. Now that's going to be interesting. Let's take a look. Yep, we're 20 degrees Celsius, about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm just going to not worry about ice protection right now. And we'll go ahead and set our transponder over on altitude encoding. And let's cut our landing lights on. Strobe lights are already on, and so we are good to go. We just got a pneumatic pressure. Go ahead and cut our fan on there. Brakes off, and let's see if we can taxi out here and get out of here. It's been fun. I've enjoyed Lukla. I'm ready to get back to Kathmandu. Flaps up. There's that heading. Let's go ahead and set our GPS so that it points to the There we go. And we'll go ahead and plug in our nav. Indicated airspeed. Bring our props back to 91%. Power back a little bit. Too much. Keep her climbing. We got to get up to 14,000 as soon as practical. Very hazy. Keeping my eyes peeled. Make sure we don't kiss the granite. And we'll zoom out a little bit on our GPS. Just kind of keep an eye out there. So we're already picking up Kathmandu VOR. I can hear it lightly singing to me in the background. We'll cut that off. Climbing through 12,200. We'll go ahead and cut off our nav lights. Auto feather off. Yaw dampers on. Taxi light. Cut that off. Good rate of climb. Add just a little bit more power. And we are on our way. There's 13,000. So we're going to be flying the VOR DME approach into Kathmandu. It's considered a circling approach because it is not lined up directly with the runway. So we could circle to land for runway 2 or 20. We'll tune the ATIS in and find out which one they're using. Looks like the clouds are starting to break up. And there's our altitude, so we'll go ahead and punch that in. Let's see if it'll hold it for us. Our airspeed's coming up as we level off. So our flaps are up, props are adjusted, trims. Got a little bit of rudder trim I would need to let off of here. There it is. Auto feathers off, yaw dampers on. Autopilot's on, taxi light, landing light off. Power levers set. Picking up some rain. The prop is 91%. And I'm gonna go ahead and power back a little bit. I can see we're running just a little bit hot on the T5. Even though we're well below the maximum on the torque pressure. Okay, we're making our turn now to Kempty intersection. We're going to stay at 14,000 feet. We're about 35 miles from, I may stand corrected, let me just take a look. 17 miles from Kempty. So we're going to want to, in just a couple of miles, go ahead and start a slow descent down to 10,500 until we get to egress, which will be the initial approach fix on the VOR. Now the VOR inbound course is 286. So right now we're set on the GPS. Our CDI is on the GPS. We are really looking at 286. It's going to be a heading over here about right there. And that's going to be our inbound course that we're going to fly when we get to Kempty. So I'm going to go ahead and use this indicated airspeed and pull this power back and begin a bit of a descent down. We'll go ahead and dial down to 10.5. Now the autopilot's trying to maintain by trimming the nose up, and I'm powering back. I want it to maintain that that airspeed by trimming the nose down, and it's beginning to do that, but I'm having to really ease back on the power. Now we're still set on nav, flying towards, we're 10 miles from Kempty. And actually I'm going to use 12,000 as my minimum until I get to Kempty. And then we'll descend from Kempty to egress to 10,500. Okay. So let's just take a look outside. You can see we don't want to get too low too early. The sun's beginning to set. So we're 4 miles from Kempty, and we are entering the Kathmandu airspace. So this would be where we would give them a call and let them know that we're entering their airspace. And we have not checked the ATIS yet, so we should do that. It's 127.0. Go ahead and put that one up there. Let's do it here, 127.0. And let's listen to COM 2.
Kathmandu Airport information, Tango 1134 Kilo, wind calm, visibility greater than 20 miles. Sky conditions, view clouds at 2,100, 3,100, scattered, ceiling 10,100, broken. Temperature 19er, viewpoint 19er, altimeter 3003, visual, runway 2 in use, landing and departing runway 2. IFR aircraft say direction of flight. All aircraft bring back full short instructions. Advise controller on initial contact, you have Tango. Kathmandu Airport information, Tango 1134 Kilo, wind calm, visibility greater than 20 miles. Sky conditions, view clouds at 2,100, 3,100, scattered, ceiling 10,100, broken.
Sorry, let's take up.
Kathmandu approach, Twin Otter 9er November Alpha Bravo Tango with you at 13, descending to 12,000. We have information, Tango. Now, of course, we're not going to hear him because he's not there, but he would call back and say, radar contact, continue, something. He'd give us some kind of information, maybe an altimeter setting. Probably not even that, though, since we have the information Tango and we've already got the altimeter. They are using runway 2, so that's what we're going to plan on. We're going to go ahead and continue our descent on down. And now that we've entered this airspace, we are... let's go ahead and set up our approach, actually. That's what we want to do. So we're going to use the procedure button, select an approach. We're going to use the VOR DME2. We'll enter that. Vectors is fine. And we want to go ahead and load that. And the message, I'm sure, is that we're in the airspace. So from Kempty, we want to go to FDO2, and looking at my approach plate, doesn't necessarily agree. We're just going to go ahead and activate it. No, that's not what we want. Not at all. So let's go back. let's set this up on heading right here. Let's do not get off of that. And let's go back here to our flight plan. What we actually need in here is egress. So I'm going to have to put it in manually. We're just going to stay on this heading. And let's just go in here and go direct. And I'll put in the waypoint. The intersection that we're actually looking for is called egress. So it's India. Ease our power back just a little bit more so we can come on down. 10.5 is what we want here. Okay, so we'll get this in here. So, India Golf. Romeo. Always try to figure out which way is quicker. That one is. India. And Sierra. There it is. Okay, so egress. Activate. That looks like it. 25 miles away. That's our initial approach fix. So that approach that's in here is not current, and so we're going to fly this. We're going to use the DME and the VOR, and we're going to be just fine. So we're 25 miles away and a slow descent. I'll add a little bit more power back in. We just want to get down to 10.5 before we get to egress. So we got plenty of time. 20 miles, over 20 miles. So everything's good. We're going to watch the sun go down. Take a look around. Enjoy the scenery here just a little bit. So instrument flying, you're really usually never able to just sit back and do nothing. There's always something that you can be doing to stay ahead of the aircraft. And there's some things right now on my mind that I definitely want to get done. But I'm just taking a second. We're gonna just kind of watch that sun filtering through those clouds, looking at how beautiful the scenery is, and then we're going to get back to work. So it's wanting our OBS set to 280, pretty much what we're setting on, so we're good there. We're set up on GPS right now. So what we want to do is just be sure we have our nav radios tuned properly. So our Kathmandu VOR is 112.3, and we have that one right now in nav 1, and there's the identifier, and we have heard the identifier. I'm also going to put that in nav 2 as well. So 112.3, and the reason I'm doing that is then I'll have this DME here that I can watch. It's just sort of easier for me to see than this one, so I can watch that one to keep up with how far away from the VOR I am, and because that's how I'm going to step down my descent. Each time I pass a certain DME fix, I'll be able to descend further. The other thing we can put in here is for the missed approach, there is a NDB that we are to fly to and hold at, and that is the dark NDB, and it looks like the frequency for that is 358. So let's see if I can get that in here. Let's go this way. So we'll just have that set up just in case we have to fly a missed approach. We don't have to be worrying with that later. 358, and swap that frequency out. So that one's set up now for the mist. So we're 17 miles away from the initial approach fix, and then we can start descending down to Kathmandu. I've been away for a few days, flying up in Lukla and around Mount Everest, and it'll be good to get back, be able to land on an airport runway that is longer than 2,000 feet, and is at an elevation lower than 10,000 feet. But enjoyed the flying up around Mount Everest. It certainly was challenging, and this will be our final flight in this series. And not sure what series we're going to do next, but we're going to push the envelope. That much I know. So there's 10,500. I'm going to go ahead then and level us off right there. So we're still 15 miles away from our initial approach fix. And we'll just add some power back in. Now, something that's happening to me right now, I'll confess, it seems that these engines are running a little hotter than normal at lower power settings, and I'm not sure why. This ram air has not been anything that has really had much effect. I just closed it. I don't even think that that's like a cow flap, to tell you the truth. I'm not real sure. Somebody can probably let me know. That's never been on any of the checklist or anything like that. So not real sure why that's happening, but there's something that's causing this thing to run a little hot. We've got our bleeds on, and our outside air temperature is a little warm, but nothing that should be causing that. So we're at 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and that shouldn't. But yeah, and probably slow these props up a little bit more. Let's bring them on down to closer to 90%, and let's see if that does anything to the temperature. Know that it's going to have a whole lot of effect on it, but just slow them down just slightly. 9 miles until we begin our initial descent. And the inbound radial is 286, and we're make sure we've got that set in there. And then we'll flip this over to the VOR, and we'll let it track that inbound once we get here to egress. So yeah, I was just going to take a look at these engine gauges. There's fuel quantity, our NG, our prop is actually below 90% now. T5's up at about 700 Celsius. Oil pressure's in the green, fuel flow's normal. Torque pressure is about 32 psi. Yeah, I just don't see anything out of the way there. Our hydraulic pressure looks good. So, yeah, I don't know. It just seems like it really shouldn't be running that hot, but it is. I was really sort of hoping for the weather to be a little bit more challenging flying back, but I'll take the beautiful sunset. But I was sort of hoping that we would have a little harder time in terms of the weather, but it is what it is. I'm using Active Sky next, and this is what it looks like right now in Kathmandu, Nepal. And so that's what we got. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of focus now then on our approach, and when I'm flying instruments, try to keep my head down pretty much on the panel and just focus on the instruments. So that's what we're going to do on this approach, other than when we need to flip a switch or something. So our first descent's going to be to 9,500 from egress. Once we cross egress, which is in 3 miles, we'll be able to descend to 9,500. And let me go ahead and be sure as far as I can tell, that we're on the 286 radial, and I think that's pretty much it. And I am going to actually, I'm on the heading mode anyway. I'm gonna go ahead and switch this over to the VOR, and I see our needles centered up there, so we'll go ahead and use the nav mode to track that. That way we don't have to worry about what the wind's doing too much. Kathmandu approach just called us and cleared us for the approach VOR DME circling approach, so that means we can begin our descent. I'll need to put the tower frequency in, and I'm gonna just go ahead and slow us up here a little bit in our descent. So what we're looking for after egress is 10 DME right here from Kathmandu, which we have dialed in nav to. We don't go below 9,500 until we've reached 10 DME, so we're 3 miles away. So we're just going to keep an eye here and here. Tw 12.6 miles away, we're at 9,800. The nav, the autopilot's doing a good job tracking the VOR. There's 11.8, there's 9.5, so we're going to go ahead and stop our descent. We're going to add a little bit of power in there, level us off, and we'll wait for 10. Now our next step down is 6,500 feet. I'm sorry, 7,500 feet. So at 10 miles we can begin that descent. And then our next DME fix will be 6.5 miles. So there's 10.2. Go ahead and ease off the power. Go back into our indicated airspeed mode. And now we've got 3.5 miles to come down 2,000 feet. So we'll just let her come on down.
Wood Street 4780, contact departure, have a good flight.
4780.
Now we're in the airport traffic area. I'm going to go ahead and get on our landing lights and our taxi light. And we'll let the passengers know we're going to be descending down to a landing. There's 8,900, 8 miles away. We're looking for 6.5 here, 7.5 there. And what I try not to do is get behind on this descent. I don't want to get ahead of it too much, but I'd rather be a little bit ahead and level off than having to do some steep descents at the end I want to be in a position to make the runway, break out of the clouds, make the runway at the end of this approach. I don't want to have to fly missed approach. So 6.8. At 6.5, we should be at 7,500, so we're already behind a little bit. So I'm going to just ease our power back. There's 6.4, so our next altitude will be 6,400. And we're looking for DME 4 now. So our rate of descent has come up, or it's gone up. And we want to get this on down to 6,400, and we want to try to be there. We got about a mile and a half, so we're having to really let it come down. That's why I like this autopilot tracking the nav. It's taking care of that part of it. Now, our missed approach point is 1 mile from the VOR. So at 1 mile from the VOR, the minimum descent is 5,120 feet. So 1 mile, 5,120 feet, we have to have that runway in sight, or else we got to fly missed approach. So we're coming up on 6,400, and we're past the 4.0 miles, so we want to come on down next one to 6,100. And that's at 3 miles. We're half a mile from there. Things are happening fast. Then at 3 miles, we can go down to 5,600 up until 2 miles. And so we'll go ahead and dial that in, because there's 3.1. There's 5,600. Now at 2 miles, then we can go on down to 5,120. There's 2.5. There's 5,600. We got to stop there. 0.2 miles, we can continue on down. There's 2 miles. We'll go on down. 5,120. 1 mile is our missed approach. We'll go ahead and start looking for the runway. I believe that's it right there. So we're going to go ahead and ditch our autopilot. Let's get our first stage of flaps in. And approach Alpha Bravo Tango has field in sight. Alpha Bravo Tango, contact the tower. Over to the tower. Good day. Okay, so we never did put the tower in there. We'll just pretend like we did. And we'll call them up. Kathmandu Tower, Twin Otter 9 November Alpha Bravo Tango is on a right base, runway 2, Kathmandu. And he calls us back and he says, Twin Otter 9 November Alpha Bravo Tango, welcome home, cleared to land, runway 2, winds calm. Winds calm, cleared to land, 9 Alpha Bravo Tango. Oh, with some more flaps in here. Let's get rid of our yaw damper. Pretty at night here. I'm glad we came in late in the day.
Okay, direct to level, cactus 1936.
Alpha Bravo Tango is clearly active. Alpha Bravo Tango, ground 0.9er. Over to ground. Good night. Okay, so I won't mess with switching the frequencies just because, you know, we're really not talking to anybody but ourselves. Okay, so flaps up. And let's cut our landing light off. Taxi lights are on. Cut our strobe light off. And we'll taxi up to the gate. Well, that was fun. That was got a little exciting there at the end. You really had to increase the rate of descent. That's actually the first time I've flown that approach, and it does require a fairly steep rate of descent, and I'm sure it has to do with the fact that there's so many mountains surrounding this airport, and they're trying to make sure there's plenty of terrain clearance. So yeah, good stuff. It's a non-precision approach, VOR DME, circle to land, because it is not lined up with the runway. If it's more than, if I'm not mistaken, something like 30 degrees, the final approach course is more than 30 degrees different from the runway, then it's considered circle to land. This one is definitely considered circle to land. So we did a non-precision approach. There is no precision approach here. I'm pretty surprised at that. This is the only international airport in Kathmandu. I'm sure they have a lot of airline traffic that comes in. Fairly good size airport, and with all these mountains and terrains, I just can't imagine they don't have an ILS in here. I'll probably take a break from flying in foreign countries for a while and fly over in the United States. We have plenty of awesome places to fly over there. Alaska, out in the Rocky Mountains. We have lots and lots and lots of awesome scenery. Orbix has done a great job out in the Northwest, the Pacific Northwest, and up in southern Alaska. And so there's a really interesting flight over there through from Anchorage through something called Merrill's Pass, and we may fly that. Been sort of thinking that might be fun to do. We have to fly through a canyon, use the GPS to kind of stay away from the granite. Well, this is where we started this series, and so I think this is a good place to end it. I want to thank everybody that's joined me. I hope that maybe you learned something, maybe you got a chuckle, and that maybe you'll come back and join me for a future flight. You know, I do this to have fun, and I want it to be fun. Don't want to bore anybody, so you know, try to add some things in the mix to keep it exciting, and we will let's just shut ourselves down here real quick. We'll go ahead and get these lights off. Everything's off there. Fleet air's off. Taxi light, pitot. Right there we go. And all the little avionics master switch, Aerosoft. Avionics master switch. Forgot one thing up here. Those lights. And then we can now shut off our left engine, right engine. There we go. Not quite so loud. Oh my Lord. Gonna go deaf. Look at that sunset. Now that's the thing of beauty. The thing of beauty is a joy forever. So again, thank you so much for joining me on this flight, and I hope you'll come back in the future. And I will bid you farewell from FS Mania. I hope you have a great one, and we'll look forward to seeing you sometime in the not too distant future. Adios.